Have you ever sat in a room, pitched an idea, and been completely ignored? Have you ever had your own family look at you and judge you solely by the clothes you wear or the balance in your bank account? Have you ever felt like a ghost, invisible among those who are supposed to love you most, straining to prove you even exist? If you answered yes, then turn off everything around you, because this story is for you. Last week, my sister Cassandra, vice president of Sterling Oak Capital, called me the family's shame. My crime? Daring to show up at her glitzy charity gala in Austin and timidly asking to borrow $500. Not for me. For emergency surgery for Hector, the old dog of Mr. Alastair, the only mentor who ever saw my worth before he passed. In front of 200 wealthy, powerful people, in a silk gown worth my year's rent, Cassandra's voice dripped venom. Maya, don't turn your petty tragedies into a burden for the successful people here. We donate to grand causes, not failed hobbies. The room fell silent. A few chuckled, and I stood there, feeling smaller than a speck of dust. Tonight, in that same rundown rental apartment, under cold neon lights, with a single line of code, I froze the $5 billion portfolio she and her firm manage. They call it a cyber attack. The press calls it a financial earthquake. The FBI might call it a crime. Me? I call it an ethical audit. Because there's one thing Cassandra and everyone in that room never knew. Every empire has a silent architect, and they made a fatal mistake, forgetting that I'm the one who drafted the blueprint for the empire they stand on. This isn't just a revenge story. It's a detailed blueprint for turning silence into the ultimate weapon, contempt into fuel, and reclaiming power without saying a word. In the next few minutes, I'll show you exactly how I exposed their hypocrisy, faced my family in an unrelenting battle, and most importantly, rebuilt my life from the ashes. Stay until the end, because the lesson I learned after that elevator door closed might change how you see power and your own worth forever. That night, I didn't take a cab. I walked. I wanted to feel each step on Austin's cold sidewalks. The clack of my cheap heels echoed, lonely, drowned out by the pulsing music spilling from 6th Street bars and the laughter of passing crowds. Texas's humid air couldn't wash away the humiliation cloaking me. It wasn't the kind of sadness that makes you cry. No, it was a hollow, freezing emptiness, like I'd been erased. In Cassandra's eyes, my family's eyes, their entire world's eyes, I didn't exist. I was a glitch, an inconvenience to be deleted. I pulled my thin jacket tighter, but the cold wasn't from outside. It came from within. Back at my apartment, I didn't turn on the living room light. I went straight to the corner, my sanctuary. It looked unremarkable. A rickety desk, a worn office chair, a custom-built PC with 3 large monitors. To anyone, it was a freelancer's workspace. To me, it was the cockpit of a starship. I sat down. My breathing stayed even. My hands no longer shook. I powered up the system. The screens flared to life, not with social media or work emails, but with an interface only one other person had ever seen. Ethereum protocol. It wasn't like any financial software you'd know. Its interface wasn't dry green and red numbers. It was a living galaxy map. Every financial entity, hedge funds, banks, it tracked was a solar system. Stars were transaction nodes, blinking in real time. Planets were asset blocks. Colorful nebulae were risk clusters, shifting from serene blue to warning yellow, then blazing red when anomalies triggered alarms. Cassandra's firm, Sterling Oak Capital, was one of the map's brightest, grandest solar systems. They paid a Swiss shell company millions yearly to tap Ethereum's computing power, oblivious that its anonymous architect lived in a rented apartment miles from their headquarters. I stared at Sterling Oak's system and a memory flooded back. Mr. Alastair. His wild silver hair, thick glasses, and eyes always twinkling with mischief. My neighbor when I was a lonely teen, he was the only one who didn't see me as a weird kid. He saw a mind. We spent thousands of hours in his dusty garage, with loyal Hector at our feet, building Ethereum. I could still hear him, tinkering with a circuit board. Maya? Code has no feelings, but coders do. Those Wall Street types write algorithms to deceive, to manipulate. We're making something else. Something to protect. Something that sees greed before it turns criminal. Ethereum protocol was born to flag unethical trades, the subtle manipulations invisible to the naked eye. It was a silent guardian. Hector lay under our feet through it all, a gentle witness to our dream. And Cassandra? with her cruel words, didn't just refuse to help me. She spat on the last legacy of the only person who believed in me. She defiled our dream. Then my phone buzzed. A new email, not from family, from the building manager. Subject, notice of lease violation. Immediate action required. My heart nearly stopped. I opened it. The manager wrote they'd received multiple complaints about my disruptive behavior and suspicious activities from my apartment, citing a highly influential community member. I had 72 hours to vacate. I didn't need to guess who that influential member was. Cassandra didn't just want me gone from her gala, she wanted me erased from existence. A deadly stillness settled over me. Humiliation vanished, pain vanished. Only clarity remained, sharp as a blade. I set the phone down. My fingers glided over the keyboard, moving the cursor to Sterling Oak Capital's solar system. A command window popped up, waiting. She'd tried to destroy my foundation. And that's when I decided it was time to show her what a true architect could do. That night, I didn't take a cab. I walked. I wanted to feel each step on Austin's cold sidewalks. The clack of my cheap heels echoed, lonely, drowned out by the pulsing music spilling from 6th Street bars and the laughter of passing crowds. Texas's humid air couldn't wash away the humiliation cloaking me. It wasn't the kind of sadness that makes you cry. No, it was a hollow, freezing emptiness, like I'd been erased. In Cassandra's eyes, my family's eyes, their entire world's eyes, I didn't exist. I was a glitch, an inconvenience to be deleted. I pulled my thin jacket tighter, but the cold wasn't from outside. It came from within. Back at my apartment, I didn't turn on the living room light. I went straight to the corner, my sanctuary. It looked unremarkable. A rickety desk, a worn office chair, a custom-built PC with 3 large monitors. To anyone, it was a freelancer's workspace. To me, it was the cockpit of a starship. I sat down. My breathing stayed even. My hands no longer shook. I powered up the system. The screens flared to life, not with social media or work emails, but with an interface only one other person had ever seen. Ethereum protocol. It wasn't like any financial software you'd know. Its interface wasn't dry green and red numbers. It was a living galaxy map. Every financial entity, hedge funds, banks, it tracked was a solar system. Stars were transaction nodes, blinking in real time. Planets were asset blocks. Colorful nebulae were risk clusters, shifting from serene blue to warning yellow, then blazing red when anomalies triggered alarms. Cassandra's firm, Sterling Oak Capital, was one of the map's brightest, grandest solar systems. They paid a Swiss shell company millions yearly to tap Ethereum's computing power, oblivious that its anonymous architect lived in a rented apartment miles from their headquarters. I stared at Sterling Oak's system and a memory flooded back. Mr. Alistair, his wild silver hair, thick glasses, and eyes always twinkling with mischief. My neighbor when I was a lonely teen, he was the only one who didn't see me as a weird kid. He saw a mind. We spent thousands of hours in his dusty garage, with loyal Hector at our feet, building Ethereum. I could still hear him tinkering with a circuit board. Maya, code has no feelings, but coders do. Those Wall Street types write algorithms to deceive, to manipulate. We're making something else, something to protect, something that sees greed before it turns criminal. Ethereum protocol was born to flag unethical trades, the subtle manipulations invisible to the naked eye. It was a silent guardian. Hector lay under our feet through it all, a gentle witness to our dream. And Cassandra, with her cruel words, didn't just refuse to help me. She spat on the last legacy of the only person who believed in me. She defiled our dream. Then my phone buzzed. A new email. Not from family. From the building manager. Subject, notice of lease violation. Immediate action required. My heart nearly stopped. I opened it. The manager wrote they'd received multiple complaints about my disruptive behavior and suspicious activities from my apartment, citing a highly influential community member. I had 72 hours to vacate. I didn't need to guess who that influential member was. Cassandra didn't just want me gone from her gala. She wanted me erased from existence. A deadly stillness settled over me. Humiliation vanished. Pain vanished. Only clarity remained, sharp as a blade. I set the phone down. My fingers glided over the keyboard, moving the cursor to Sterling Oak Capital's solar system. A command window popped up, waiting. She'd tried to destroy my foundation, and that's when I decided it was time to show her what a true architect could do. You might think I'd celebrate, that I'd pop champagne, dance around my apartment in front of that blazing red screen, reveling in the downfall of the one who trampled me. But no. There was no joy, just an enveloping stillness, a sense of a job done. I stood, walked to the kitchen, and brewed a pot of chamomile tea. Steam rose, carrying a gentle scent. I'd unleashed a financial storm that could wipe out billions and dozens of careers. Yet, my next act was utterly ordinary. Because to me, this wasn't a party. It was a cleanup, a necessary, long overdue purge. Hours later, the first news broke on financial channels, not mainstream TV, but the encrypted feeds I monitor. Headlines scrolled across my screen, cold and brutal. Sterling Oak Capital halts trading, markets reel. Mysterious Protocol 7 triggers decade's largest lockdown. Seek launches urgent probe into Sterling Oak's fraudulent activity. I read them without blinking. These were predictable consequences. Like flipping a rock, you know you'll see the creatures beneath scurry from the light. And then, as expected, they started calling. The first was from my father. I recognized his number instantly, though we hadn't spoken in months. I picked up and stayed silent. "Maya?" His voice roared through the phone, a mix of rage and raw fear. "What have you done? The world's in chaos. The feds might get involved. Do you realize how this will ruin the family's reputation?" Family reputation. That was his first thought. Not, "Are you okay?" or "What happened between you and Cassandra?" Just reputation. I replied calmly, my voice smooth as an undisturbed lake. "I didn't do anything, Dad. I just turned on the light." Turned on the light? You call destroying your sister's career turning on the light? The truth was always there. You all just chose not to see it. I helped you look closer. I hung up before he could respond. 5 minutes later, my mother called. Her tone was different. No anger, just sobs and desperate pleas. "Maya, sweetheart, please stop. Whatever happened, Cassandra's still your sister. She worked so hard to get where she is. Why would you do this to your own family?" Family. That word again. One they only wielded when they needed a shield, an excuse for their ugly deeds. I listened to her cry, her tales of Cassandra's collapse, how she might face prison, how it was all my fault. For a moment, that familiar guilt, the kind that gnawed at me for years, tried to resurface. But this time was different. Ethereum didn't just show me financial data. It revealed the truth about these relationships. Mom, I cut her off, my voice steady. When I needed $500 to save the dog of the man who took me in, where was family? When I was humiliated in front of hundreds, where was family? I didn't destroy this family. I'm just showing it's been fractured for a long time. I ended the call. The apartment sank back into silence, broken only by the clock's tick. I knew more calls would come. They wouldn't stop. Their panic was just beginning. And I realized dodging them, ignoring them, solved nothing. This cleanup needed to be thorough. Mr. Alastair once said, "You can't fix bad code by slapping new code over it. You go back, find the root, and rewrite it right." The root of this problem was them. I picked up my phone, opened my contacts, and found Dad's number. Instead of waiting for another call, I sent a single terse message. "We need to talk. All of us. At my place. I'll send the address. The ball was in my court now. This time, they'd play by my rules." I didn't arrange to meet them at a neutral cafe or a sterile conference room. I sent them the address of a place I knew would strip them of every advantage. An old warehouse in East Austin, where Mr. Alastair and I spent weekends turning wild ideas into reality. No polished wood or eucalyptus oil like Cassandra's office. It smelled of old machine oil, ozone from electronics, and damp concrete. This was my sanctuary. Tonight, it would be their arena. I arrived an hour early. The space was vast, cold. Overhead factory lights cast pools of brightness and deep shadows. My footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. In the center, I'd set up a long metal table and 4 chairs. That's it. Simple, raw, no room for pretense. On the opposite wall, I'd rigged a large projection screen. They arrived in a luxury car, absurdly out of place on the potholed road leading here. My father stepped out first. He wore an expensive polo shirt, but his scowl made it look like a prisoner's uniform. He surveyed the warehouse with disdain, as if wading through a dump. My mother followed, clutching her designer handbag like a lifeline. Her eyes met mine, pleading silently for reconciliation she knew wouldn't come. They sat, wordless. The warehouse's silence was heavy, broken only by the faint buzz of an old bulb. They were waiting. Then Cassandra arrived. She was 15 minutes late, a deliberate power play, an old habit she couldn't break. But her power was gone. She wore a sharp business outfit, but it couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes or the tension in her jaw. Her forced smile never reached her eyes, which betrayed poorly masked panic. Her heels clicked sharply on the concrete, a feeble challenge in my domain. She took the last chair facing me and crossed her arms, a defensive stance. All four were here now, the people who'd shaped my life with their indifference, contempt, and betrayal. They watched me, expecting tears, accusations, some weakness to seize upon, but I gave them nothing they wanted. I let the silence stretch another minute, letting their unease sink in. Then I cleared my throat, the sound reverberating in the empty space. "Thank you for coming," I began, my voice eerily calm. My politeness seemed to unnerve them further. I looked each one in the eye, ending with Cassandra. "I didn't invite you here to argue, not to hear empty apologies you've rehearsed. I'm not here to demand anything." I paused, letting my words hang in the air. "I brought you here for two reasons. First, to show you the full truth, not my version or Cassandra's, the undeniable truth of the numbers. And second, I leaned forward slightly to give you a choice." Before they could react, I picked up the small remote on the table and pressed a button. The projector hummed to life, casting Ethereum Protocol's interface onto the massive screen behind me. The galaxy map blazed, vivid and colorful. At its center, Sterling Oak Capital's solar system burned red with crisis. I heard my mother gasp. I saw my father's jaw clench, but my eyes stayed on Cassandra. She stared at the screen, at the thing that shattered her world, and for the first time in my life, I saw in my sister's eyes not confidence or scorn, but recognition. She knew she'd lost, and my performance was only beginning. "Let's begin," I said, my voice the only thing piercing the heavy silence. I aimed the remote at the screen. Ethereum's galaxy map shifted. I zoomed into Sterling Oak Capital's red solar system. "Everything starts small," I continued, like a professor lecturing. Like this. The screen highlighted a transaction from 7 years ago. A trivial sum, a few $1,000s, moved from a company fund to an offshore shell entity. This was your first fraudulent deal, Cassandra. A ghost fund you set up to test the system. It was tiny, unnoticed, but Ethereum saw it. It flagged and tracked it ever since. Cassandra stiffened. "What nonsense are you spouting? It was just an accounting error." "Really?" I pressed another button. Hundreds of similar transactions appeared, forming a tangled web like a metastasizing tumor. An accounting error repeated 347 times over 7 years? You grew bolder, moving larger sums, hiding them with more complex trades. You thought you were clever, but you just left more trails for my algorithm to dissect. I didn't look at her. I turned to my father, and that boldness needed capital. "Dad, remember the Hill Country real estate project 3 years ago? Nearly bankrupt until a sudden angel investment from a Panama company? I projected a financial flow. A blazing red arrow traced money from Cassandra's ghost funds through 2 other shells into Dad's project account. His face blanched. I didn't know where that money came from," he stammered. "Didn't know or chose not to ask," I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. "And Mom," I shifted to my trembling mother. "Your Wings of Dreams charity, the one that got you a seat on the Art Museum's board, 20% of its operating budget the last 2 years, came from this same source." Mom began to cry. "No," Cassandra said, "it was from donors." "Exactly," Cassandra finally roared, her defenses crumbling. "I did it all. I did it to save Dad's business. I did it so Mom could have the status she craved. I carried this family on my back while you hid in this hole, playing with your computers." "Playing?" I said the word slowly, dangerously. "You call this playing?" I pressed the final button. The screen displayed a new set of documents. "These are Mr. Alastair's tech patents. After he died, you used your position at Sterling Oak to systematically undervalue them, then had a subsidiary scoop them up for pennies." "Know what's in here, Cassandra?" "The foundation of the voice recognition tech your firm just sold to a conglomerate for hundreds of millions. A legacy that should have been mine. You didn't just steal money, you stole the legacy of the only person who ever treated me right." Silence engulfed the room. This time, even Cassandra had no words. My father broke it, turning to her, his voice shaking with anger and fear. "What have you done, Cassandra? You've dragged our family into the mud." I let them tear at each other for a few seconds before shutting off the projector. The room dimmed, lit only by the faint glow of overhead bulbs. All eyes turned to me. As I said, I began, rising from my chair. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to offer a choice. Option 1, you tell the whole truth. Cooperate with investigators. Return every cent taken illegally. You'll face consequences. Lose your reputation, maybe go to court. But you'll have a chance to start clean. I paused, locking eyes with them. Option 2, you do nothing. Cover up, deny, blame me. If you choose that path, I held up my phone. In 24 hours, an unedited, complete copy of Ethereum Protocol's report, including this evidence and more, will automatically send to the SEC's Special Investigations Team, the Texas Attorney General's Office, and the Wall Street Journal's news desk. You have 24 hours to decide who you are. After that, the data will find its rightful place, with or without me. Those 24 hours were probably the longest in my family's lives, but for me, they passed in an oddly serene way. I didn't glue myself to my phone. I didn't pace in anxiety. Instead, I did something I'd put off for too long. I drove to the animal shelter on the outskirts, where Mr. Alastair's dog Hector spent his final days. I used the $500 I'd meant to borrow from Cassandra, plus some of my savings to make a donation. I spent the afternoon there, walking abandoned dogs, feeling their unconditional trust. It was a simple, pure connection, something money or power could never buy. It reminded me why I started this. No calls or texts came from my family. Their silence was their answer. And in the 23rd hour, a news alert popped up on my phone. Not from an encrypted channel, but a major wire service. The headline was brief: Sterling Oak founders. Family pledges full cooperation with federal probe. They chose the hard path. The path of truth. I don't know if it was remorse or just fear of the alternative. Maybe both. But it didn't matter anymore. They'd made their choice, and in that moment, my burden lifted. 6 months later, the world had shifted. Sterling Oak Capital, after a painful restructuring, was acquired by a larger rival and rebranded. Cassandra was stripped of her licenses and faces a lengthy trial. Her cooperation might spare her the harshest sentence, but the career she built on ruthlessness and lies is dust. My father's business collapsed. My mother withdrew from all social circles. They paid their price. But my story doesn't end with their fall. It begins with my rebirth. The old warehouse in East Austin is unrecognizable. The smell of machine oil and damp concrete has given way to fresh paint, roasted coffee, and vibrant creative energy. Bare concrete walls are now lined with whiteboards, scrawled with equations and ideas. Cold factory lights have been replaced by warm, modern fixtures. This is now the headquarters of Alastair Ventures. Using part of the assets I legally recovered from Mr. Alastair's patents, I founded a venture capital fund. But we don't chase the next billion-dollar unicorn. We seek overlooked founders, especially women and minorities in tech. We invest in ideas that don't just promise profit, but solve real problems with ethics at their core. Ethereum Protocol is no longer a weapon. It's our shield, a gatekeeper ensuring the companies we back operate transparently. Today, I'm in a glass-walled meeting room, listening to a young woman named Sophia pitch her project. She has a brilliant idea to use AI to help the visually impaired see the world through tactile feedback. She's passionate, but nervous. My idea is great, she says, her voice trembling. But how can I compete with giant tech corporations? They have endless resources. I smile, a genuine, unguarded smile. They have more money, but you have a better why. Build from that. Create a product that solves a real problem for real people. Don't try to be them. Be the best version of you. Her eyes light up with hope. In that moment, I see myself years ago in Mr. Alastair's dusty garage. I once thought power was the ability to destroy. I was wrong. True power is the ability to build. The best revenge isn't watching your enemies fall. It's building a life, an empire, so solid their existence no longer matters to you. Your worth isn't in others' recognition. It's in what you create when no one's watching. It's in your integrity when faced with temptation. And sometimes it's found in silence. Not because you're weak, but because you're too busy building a world their words can't touch. 1 year later, time has a strange way of healing. It doesn't erase scars, but it softens them, turning raw wounds into quiet lines on the map of your life. Alastair Ventures has become a beacon in Austin's tech community. The old warehouse is now alive with laughter, the clack of keyboards, and the rich aroma of roasted coffee. We've funded 7 startups, all led by women or minorities. Sophia, the young woman with her project to help the visually impaired, just secured her 2nd round of funding. Each time I see the fire in their eyes, I see Mr. Alastair, and I know I'm on the right path. I stopped following news about my family. From public channels, I know Cassandra's trial ended. She got probation and years of monitoring, a lenient outcome, largely due to the family's cooperation. My parents sold their big Westlake house and moved to a smaller town. They returned what they could. Legally, it's settled. Emotionally, I thought the story was over. Until this afternoon. In my mailbox, among work letters and tech magazines, was a handwritten envelope. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. My mother's. It wasn't the sharp, confident script of old, but shaky, uncertain. I nearly tossed it. I told myself I owed them nothing, not even a moment to read a few lines. But something stopped me. Not curiosity, but a sense of needing to close the final chapter, whatever it held. That evening, in my cozy little apartment, I sat by the window, watching Austin's skyline shift colors. I brewed a cup of tea and slowly opened the letter. It was short. No apologies or excuses I once thought I'd want. Instead, it spoke of simple things. Mom wrote about her small garden, how Dad started teaching carpentry to local kids. She said Cassandra was in therapy, admitting for the first time that jealousy and insecurity had driven her for years. The letter's final line was just one sentence. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness, Maya. I'm writing to thank you. You destroyed our old world, but you gave each of us a chance to build a truer one. I read that line again and again. No tears fell. No triumph surged. Just a quiet understanding. I once thought winning meant seeing them crumble, but I realized true victory is the moment you stop caring whether they stand or fall. Your peace no longer hinges on their remorse. Your success isn't measured by their failure. I folded the letter, placing it in an old wooden box with Mr. Alastair's savings book. I won't reply, not out of anger, but because there's nothing left to say. Their story is theirs now, and they must write its next chapters. I have my own. I looked out the window. The sun had set, leaving streaks of orange and purple across the sky. The city twinkled, a man-made galaxy. In the corner, my computer screen ran Ethereum's interface, silent and steadfast. The financial solar system spun, but now they were distant sparks. Sterling Oak's red blaze had long cooled. I sipped my tea, warmth spreading through me. At last, I understood the greatest lesson Mr. Alastair meant to teach me. We're all architects, but the grandest structure we can build isn't an algorithm, a company, or an empire. It's the peace within our own soul.